Welcome to Wound Care Matters podcast, brought to you by Mediq UK. Join us as we take a deep dive into the world of wound care. Welcome to our third episode, as we delve into the innovative tripartite approach to designing and implementing a multi-disciplinary wound care curriculum in higher education. I'm Sharon Gardner, Clinical Services Manager for Mediq UK, and I'm thrilled to be joined by two special guests. We've got Jane Munro, a lecturer in nursing and adult healthcare at the University of West Scotland, and Heather Hodgson, lead tissue viability nurse for NHS Greater Glasgow Clyde. Together, Jane, Heather and I have embarked on a mission to modernize post-registration education standards in wound care. Our unique tripartite approach brings together three distinct disciplines to the environment of learning. These three disciplines are industry, university and NHS, fostering a collaborative environment to share knowledge and skills for achieving the best outcomes in wound care education. So tune in as we discuss the challenges, insights and successes of this pioneering educational initiative. So welcome, Jane and Heather. Can I start by asking you, Jane, obviously I've mentioned in the intro a few big words there around tripartite working. Can you actually explain to the audience what tripartite working means to us?
Well, from my point of view, from the academic point of view, tripartite working is a fusion and a bringing together of academia, clinical and industry, and the skills and knowledge that it comes with it. And I've been given a great opportunity at UWS to develop the tripartite model with yourselves for the benefit of my students. So it's been excellent.
And where did that sort of initiative or that thought pattern come from? What brought us to working together for the module?
I think two things really. The module was due for an update. Some of the references were a bit out of date, I would say, they needed updated. And some of the cases probably need updated to reflect current guidelines. So there was that, and also that different virtual learning environments provide different resources for students to learn. So it was a real opportunity to start utilising them. And secondly was I just finished my doctorate in education and had the research had revealed some interesting aspects of curriculum development and curriculum design that hadn't existed in wound care before, as far as I could see. And it was a really good opportunity to bring those in together as one.
And do you think you could just elaborate a little bit on what that research showed you? What did it tell you that was sort of missing from education or that was needed to change?
Yeah, I think the main thing is that even though historically we've used problem-solving techniques, is that what I found out from the research is that it doesn't matter how often you can use problem-solving examples and case studies, is that students find it very difficult to transfer from one clinical situation, the knowledge they've acquired, in one clinical situation to another clinical situation. And the research really brought out Wood's previous work, which is basically what we should be doing, is teaching independent problem-solving skills or context-independent problem-solving skills separate to the wound care education, in order that they can develop problem-solving skills that can be taken to any clinical situation, rather than teaching them both together, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the design of the tripartite model is really to bring in problem-solving skills, but actually early on in the module is to bring them in independently of the wound care education resources. And then as the module goes on, is actually start bringing them closer together, so that the students are much more able to apply generic problem-solving skills to various wound care problems in different scenarios, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so different settings that they can transfer those skills over. So Heather, I remember still to this day that phone call that Paul took when you rang us and asked if we wanted to get involved. We were like, yeah, definitely. And then we kind of went, oh my God, how much work is this going to entail? So tell us a little bit about your thoughts around what we've done, the tripartite working, how because I know you and the team, the Tissue Viability team, have massively contributed to that wound care module. So tell us a little bit about how you felt it went, how it's gone.
Well, I've been doing tissue viability since 2008 and worked really closely with industry. And I think industry is a resource that's majorly underused. We have the clinical skills amongst us and a wealth of knowledge and experience within our clinical colleagues. However, there's a lack of appreciation of what our industry colleagues have, and that wealth of experience and knowledge. Plus, I'm acutely aware you have a library of resources. So when Jane approached, I knew I could provide all the clinical expertise from Greater Glasgow Clyde, but I knew my industry partners would be able to add so much more as well. And so coming together and investing in the students who are our future tissue viability nurses, it was so important to get that entire experience underpinned by that whole education, resources and knowledge.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we obviously all agreed, didn't we, when we sat there and got all excited about what we were going to do and everything. So agreed. So obviously in this area, you are quite clearly tissue viability guru. When I hear your name, you are to me. So tell me a little bit about your background and the team, and kind of, you know, people listening might have heard of tissue viability. They might be fully aware of what tissue viability service does, but tell us a little bit about the service and what you provide to patients in this area.
Tissue viability really is, in its broadest sense, wound management, wound healing for a range of wounds, and it's there to support clinicians of all backgrounds. So we can support clinicians who are brand new registered nurses who are at a loss what to do, right up to supporting surgeons in theatre, sort of taking, you know, them forward and using modern technology to advance really, really complex wounds. It's an amazing specialty to get into because you don't know what's happening really from hour to hour. It's referral dependent. We have a fabulous job description that includes research, teaching, as well as majorly clinical, and a lot about prevention of wounds developing, as well as taking these wounds to healing, writing policies, guidelines, being involved in not only national work, but international work. So it's an amazing, interesting specialty that just is varied from hour to hour.
Yeah. And how many have you got in your team? How many nurses or other practitioners have you got in your team?
In total, there are 10 people covering a huge area. We're the biggest, well, it was Europe, we're the biggest board in Europe, serving the biggest population. I've got an amazing team and I get quite emotional.
So rightly so.
Our team, my team's amazing.
Yeah.
I lead an amazing team and every single person really enjoys their job, gives their all, and they've all got something different to contribute, and that's what makes the Glasgow team work. And we're a very tight-knit, cohesive team that we appreciate one another, and I'm very, very protective and defensive of them. But it works, and we're forward-thinking, and we have a very much can-do attitude.
Yeah, and quite rightly so, and hopefully they know how you feel about them and how you view them.
Oh, they do.
I'm sure you tell them. So thinking about, obviously, you mentioned about complexities, about patients and stuff. Is there anything particularly, maybe in the current day, we know we've come through a pandemic, we know we've all worked in, you know, a very different world. Anything particular that's been challenging or anything that's challenging for you within tissue viability at the moment? Obviously maintaining patient confidentiality. Is there anything that you're really passionate about, or that really gives you something to think about?
I'm really passionate about person-centred goals.
Yeah.
Clinicians' goals are often different from the person's goals.
Yeah.
And often the approach to, and it's not just unique to wound care, is that the clinician knows best. And sometimes that plan of care does not meet what that person needs or desires. So I would ask all nurses, not just even in wound care, is to take a step back and look at that patient as a person, and find out what their goals are and how they can contribute. That's a real challenge, because it's often ritualistic. For example, not allowing a person to shower. If they've got a really smelly wound, a female, really smelly, a breast wound or whatever, all they want is a shower and to feel clean. But I come across so often, the nurse says I've not to shower. Yeah. So it's just addressing that and being aware of the most up-to-date evidence-based practice, and get rid of all this ritualistic, outdated nursing.
Yeah. And I think you get that in all aspects of nursing. And obviously the last podcast that we did, we talked about the things that we take for granted. So people who haven't got a wound or a skin condition or haven't had a health challenge, you take things for granted, like I can have a shower. I can get up in the morning, I can have a shower. And absolutely, you're right, those patients that can't shower, or you can't get that dressing wet, you can't do this, you can't do that. Why? Why are we not thinking a little bit more outside the box?
Yeah. Or asking people to travel.
Yeah.
To get their wound attended to. Yeah. Why not give them the skills to change their own dressing? Not only for the person, it's financially as well, environmentally. It ticks so many boxes by empowering people to do their own wound care.
Yeah, to look after themselves. Yeah. And quite often patients want to, most people now have access to the internet. Most people have a mobile phone. Patients have always been very expert in their own health, haven't they? But now they've got far greater access to resources now. Patients know what they want. They know how they want to be looked after.
Yeah, and they deserve to have that time invested in them.
Yeah.
So that their goals are met. Because if they're not, they tend to do their own thing anyway. And I don't know how many times I hear, well, we just purchased our own dressings. Yeah. Because you are right, Sharon. Yeah. These people do Google searches, and then they go on Amazon and they buy what they think's right for them. Yeah. And really, we should be working in partnership with the people we look after.
Yeah, absolutely. That right there, that passion, that absolute passion that comes out of Heather, that thought, that care, is absolutely what was needed, I feel. I mean, when I look at me and you, the three of us sat together, I think I just tidied up everyone's presentations. I didn't bring half the things that Heather brought to it, but that passion and that knowledge is absolutely what was needed to develop the course that obviously is run at the university. So we are fully through the first cohort?
Fully through the first cohort, yes.
Yeah, so how have the students found the module and sort of have they fed back how it's gone?
Can I pick up on something?
Of course you can, yeah.
Heather said it's about the moving away from ritualistic care, and that is what the problem solving, the context independent problem solving is that no person, no wound, no nurses the same, but for some reason everybody's trying to standardise things. So when things can't be standardised, for example, somebody can't find a wound dressing that a patient had in hospital, they're discharged to home, they can't find the same dressing, panic because that's what the dressing that is needed, or something else happens. They're very ritualised. But this whole idea of the independent problem solving is about, let's do the very best we can with the resources that we've got, because you will never have the ideal resources and the ideal situation or the ideal knowledge across the board on any one occasion. So you really have to develop confidence in the systems that you go through to resolve or to solve that problem with what you have at the time. And that obviously includes up-to-date guidelines and policies, etc.
Why do you think that? Because you see that in all areas, you know, I see it when I'm in my honorary role. Why do you think there is that ritualistic practice, that fear that, like you say, that example, oh, well, we can't get that dressing that's been recommended in the discharge summary. Why is that ritualistic thought there? Why do you think it's so embedded in us?
It's an interesting question, Sharon. I suppose as nurses, you're always very aware of the NMC and the regulator in case you've made a wrong decision, and that you always have to make sure that you're up to date clinically. So that's what you always strive for. So you're always scared in case that if you go off piste a bit, then you need to come back in. But in actual fact, if you don't have all of the resources that you need and access to expert knowledge, and even what the research found out is you can go to two people, you could have Heather in one chair and somebody else in another, and you give a situation, you won't necessarily agree. So there's this the encouragement for my students to work with ambiguity, to work with not having all the information that they need, because very often in reality that's not the case. So it's taking a departure from believing that you need everything is to going through a much more systematic way of demonstrating that you've done what you can with what you have, if that makes sense, always with the patient's outcome focused as well. So, you know, in the research, some of the nurses were saying that, I was getting really angry with that patient because they wouldn't do what I asked them, and I knew that was the best thing for them. And they said, well, I'll do that, and then I come back the next week and they've gone and done their own thing. Is that actually the patient concordance and the agreement and patient-centred goals are actually much more important. So it's really about developing the students' communication skills and understanding that, it's all right to have the patient agree to tell you what the goal is, because, anything else goes beyond what the patient actually wants. So it's not black and white, and it's actually encouraging the students to say that's okay. So when you deal with the systematic ideas of working with ambiguity, of dealing with perhaps team members that don't necessarily work in the same way as you, so you're developing your communication skills, conflict management skills, those are the kind of skills that we're teaching initially independently of the actual wound care, so that what you can do is, once they're kind of embedded in the students' learning, is they can transfer that to wound care in any context. In fact, later on they can transfer it to any context at all, as long as you've developed these generic problem-solving skills. Yeah,
and I think it's giving them the knowledge and expertise to be confident, to be brave sometimes, isn't it? Like you say, everything isn't black and white. Your world is not black and white. No patient's black and white. It's not, nothing's the same, is it? So it's about giving them that skill, that knowledge to be brave sometimes, and to make decisions that maybe they think they wouldn't have done before.
And it does. It's life. So there's nothing really that I could do to change it, because in many respects it's good. It's necessary to have, consensus documents and guidelines, and you stick to that. But sometimes it is necessary that's not always available to you at the time, particularly in wound care, in very different scenarios that are often can be quite clinically harrowing as well, that the guidelines, you could almost just think they are just guidelines. I'm just going to have to go and be confident to do my own thing.
So take you back to the original question.
Yeah.
How have the students found it?
I think the students have not engaged. I didn't expect them to engage, and Wood's work basically says that students find this very difficult because these are passionate nurses that want to get involved in wound care, and you're talking about conflict management, or you're talking about how to prioritise. You give them examples and say, prioritise this, but actually it's got nothing to do with wound care. And they're going, oh, well, I thought this module was about wound care. So I think the way that I've developed it, it's Woods basically suggests you bring it in very, very slowly, and don't go too radical, because they will find it uncomfortable, and won't necessarily engage with it. So the way that the instructional design has just been, I've put it in every week. Basically, there's a problem-solving skill that's separate to the wound care, the videos that we've got in, and the PowerPoint presentations and the chats, etc. So I'm just going to start switching it up a bit and see if I can get them engaging with the problem solving a bit more.
Yeah.
But it's the first time, and it's a brave move in terms of changing up the curriculum, definitely.
Yeah. And obviously it's virtual, so you've got a group of students from all different backgrounds and disciplines, and they're doing this learning via this virtual platform, which is very different, isn't it, to sort of face-to-face learning?
Yes, yeah, indeed. So yeah, it is different, but I'd say that as long as the instructional design is correct, then you will get a community of learning where that you can they can engage with each other when I'm not there.
Yeah.
And we encourage them to share their background, share any questions, any worries that they have. And very often what it does is they actually speak to one another and go, God, I hadn't even realised that. Somebody in the north of Scotland and somebody in South Africa, go, oh, I didn't realise that. So, bringing that community of learning together is part of the curriculum, if you like.
Yeah. Brilliant. So going back to your team, have you been an established team for a long time? Have you got new members within the team, or have you all been like a big family that's...
No. Half the team have been there a long time, and then other members of the team are new. I've just got 2 new members of the team coming on, and again, this was sort of innovative thinking. Nationally, there's a podiatry shortage, and they've tried all sorts of methods and all sorts of things to try and recruit podiatry. So in Glasgow, we realised that Tissue Viability could support podiatry, and we've converted some podiatry vacancy money into Tissue Viability money.
Okay.
And we're recruiting additional members of the team, so they're brand new. And our team, very diverse. We have members of the team who have come from industry. Mm-hmm. We have members of the team who have come from being a band 5, because I don't believe it's how long you've been in a job, it's what you've done in that job. So very diverse, bringing a whole load of different skills and knowledge, but we all work together and we all support one another, and that's...
Good. So in terms of, because obviously that's very different, isn't it? That's a very different, and obviously when I've worked in tissue viability in the past, we're tissue viability, you're podiatry, you're this, you're that. So actually that's a really forward-thinking way of looking at, actually, this is the services that we need in this area, whether it be foot, other, and you've taken some of that responsibility, I don't know if responsibility is the right word, but responsibility into your team. What kind of things, because obviously we're talking about education, working together, what kind of strategies or plans have you got in place to kind of train those new members of staff? What's the plan in terms of that new way of working in terms of your podiatry gap?
Well, to be honest, the team did look after pressure damage in feet up till 6 years ago.
Okay.
So the dinosaurs in the team, and I include myself, I include that. However, we have worked very closely with our podiatry colleagues who have been very supportive, and we've had education sessions with them. We've done all our Learn Pro modules with the CPR for feet.
Yeah.
One of our new members of the team has gone off and done a foot health course. And our podiatry colleagues are there for us. And if there's anything that we're not sure of, they're just a phone call away. Timely is the new international debridement consensus. So we'll be working alongside that. And I do tap in. I was going to sort of say that about this module as well. We put a wee bit of a support mechanism for the students as well from all three parties.
Yeah.
There was the clinical support, which the students had access to a whole tissue viability team to support them clinically, but we had all the education resources and from industry, and we had the academic support from Jane. So these students had access to a lot of support, and if they needed support, they got that support quickly.
Yeah.
So I would utilise that, and the team members will utilise the same sort of support, reaching out to academia, reaching out to industry, reaching out to each other and our podiatry colleagues to make sure that our patients are getting a person-centred, evidence-based sort of approach. So
I think having Heather's input means that the module is far more responsive. So something like that development with the podiatrists, because the central modules there, Heather speaks to me, there's an increase in podiatry education that's needed here, we can just do that. Or if you notice there's a particular issue coming up about a particular type of wound, we can just do that. You know, it's not that we have to establish the relationship, it has to fit in somewhere. You know, I can work within the general learning outcomes, and the content is not necessarily prescribed. So therefore we can make it contemporary.
Yeah. And the next question really is, you've kind of already answered that a little bit with what you've just said there, but, you know, if anybody else was looking at doing some form of learning or working in a collaborative approach like we did, what sort of advice or tips would you give them? Make sure you've got someone that can use PowerPoint. Make sure you've got someone that's got years and years and years and years of knowledge.
I think certainly somebody with autonomy and seniority like Heather, because it frees you up, Heather, to some extent to make decisions that, you know, when I came to you and we had a chat about it, you were like, all right, well, we can do this. I can phone up a member of my team, we'll get them to do that presentation. Oh, she's an expert in this. Oh, yes, and we'll phone up Sharon because she'll have access to this kind of information on the formulary. All that kind of stuff is... the responsiveness is actually really, really good. And so I think it's definitely seniority, I would say, and autonomy to work.
Yeah.
And likewise, I have the module coordinator, and, you know, I'm accountable from start to finish with it. So as long as, you know, the student evaluations are good and there's no issues in terms of student results and the qualities there in terms of the university regulations, again, I don't have to go and ask anybody to do anything that I can't do myself. Yeah.
What do you think? Have you learned anything from it, or would you do anything differently maybe?
I don't think so. I think we need to roster in the time. I think we underestimated the time.
Yeah.
However, we all had a can-do attitude.
Yeah.
And if you've got a can-do attitude and it's part of your job, do you know, you can get it done.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, you can get it done. And there was no hesitation from the team to get it done. And we saw the value in doing this. So yeah, and as long as you've got somebody that within your team that can work to deadlines, and it wasn't an onerous task. We just had some tight deadlines to work to, and it was an opportunity to just check that we were really up to date, and an opportunity to update presentations and things that we would have needed done anyway. And I've always enjoyed a professional relationship, but a fruitful relationship with industry. And I think people shy away from doing that because in the past, there was some... I'm struggling with the words.
I'm trying to be professional.
I'm trying to be professional. There may be, maybe some practices that were sort of out with the guidelines and boundaries that we're all bound by our code of conduct, not only the NMC code of conduct, but our code of conduct within each board. And sometimes there was just maybe a wee bit of working out with that. Yeah. And that gave industry a bad name. Yeah. Whereas in Greater Glasgow Clyde, we are very by the... that's one of my things is I'm by the book. Yeah. So by working to that guidance and by the book, you can enjoy a very productive and very person-centred and really good outcomes for whatever you're doing when you're working on that professional level with industry.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. And obviously, homing in on what you've said about that ethical obligation, that, that professional sort of boundary, really. Obviously, I'm a clinician. I still practice. I'm still on the NMC and I work for industry. But actually, the three of us as a collective came together and it worked well. But I would agree with you on the time thing. And interestingly, when I asked you about the that black and white, that people just, I wonder sometimes whether that's a time pressure element as well. We know everybody is busy, everybody is struggling for time, and I just wonder whether sometimes time has an impact on people not thinking outside the box or not being able to step away from that black and white as well. But it's just a thought, really.
Yeah, I'm not sure time. I think it's historical. People have just worked in silos, and it's actually you have to make a concerted effort. But if you think of getting the right, wound product onto a particular wound at a particular stage in time, is that you can't do it without education, clinical or industry. So it just mirrors really what's there.
Yeah.
And I think nurses are so busy doing things that they don't need to do, ritualistic practices, that if they actually just took a wee minute and stepped back and had a look now, two big person-centred things and two big things that have saved an enormous amount of time, release time to go back into hands-on care in Glasgow has been the ABCD, the way of documentation. And the other thing is we're being very, very sort of prescriptive about pressure ulcer prevention, because it's been ritualistic blanket, everybody gets 2 hourly interventions. So that's the work we're doing, and it's amazing the amount of time that's been released by being person-centred. Yeah. So if they stop doing the ritualistic, everybody gets turned 2 hourly, everybody gets this 2 hourly, and make it person-centred and what that person needs, it does release time. Yeah. It does get you off shifting time. It reduces your stress levels. So it's just been thinking logically and person-centred rather than, right, this is the way we've done it and this is the way we're always going to do it.
Yeah. And I think that's probably what I was trying to get to then about time and management of workloads and stuff like that. And you absolutely nailed what I was trying to say there. So So I'm going to finish by asking you both, and you can ask me the same question if you want. If somebody was listening to this and they thought, I want to get into tissue viability, what would you advise and what would you tell them? How would you sort of guide somebody who's interested in becoming a specialist nurse in tissue viability?
Well, first of all, don't let your grade put you off. Don't let, even if you're a band 5, don't let that put you off. But what to do is start developing your skill set and your CV that you can present at interview. Become a link nurse. Yeah. Undertake an initiative that a piece of improvement work, focusing on wound care, tissue viability. Demonstrate that you've got a commitment to that. It doesn't need to be a huge piece of work. It can be the introduction of something small. Seek the support of your local TVN and get involved there, to support any initiatives they're doing. And of course, get enrolled in that course that's run by the University of West of Scotland.
Yeah. What about you? What if someone wanted to go into academia? Or what sort of tip, one piece of advice, anything?
In particular to wound care or? Yeah.
Nursing or healthcare?
I'd say be absolutely student focused. It's, it's the students that are the centre of it, and the job is the students. So make sure, obviously, from the nursing point of view, that your resources are contemporary. But that, nothing gives me more satisfaction than you see, because I deal with postgraduate students generally that are coming to do CPD, which is this, some of the students that are on this module do, who are fantastic clinicians, but they're in job, they need to have a degree now, they've been in the job for 20-30 years, they struggle, perhaps have struggled with academia, and it's a discipline in itself. And the Scottish Qualifications Authority framework require it grade at levels 7, 8, 9, 10 of different levels of critical thinking and analysis. And I say to the students, but you're doing this all the time. You're doing it all the time. But what they find it challenging to do is translate it into writing skills. So a lot of my job is actually encouraging them to believe in themselves and developing much more critical thinking and critical writing skills. And great ways to do that, I've encouraged students to submit to conferences of work that they've already presented as case studies. I encourage them to apply for scholarships. And sometimes you just find some little diamonds in the dust that just come into the course, and you go, whoa. And last year we had one that went straight from doing his bachelor's degree, straight into doing his PhD.
Yeah.
So it's just, that's what brings the joy. And then they go back to clinical and go, oh my goodness, I see better. I'm far more confident to question things and to solve problems. So yeah, that would be my advice. Yeah.
It's harnessing those individual skills, isn't it? Well, I just want to say that I am so proud of us, the work that we've done and everything that went into it, and all the sort of skills and knowledge and conversations we had about Howler and PowerPoint. I am so proud of the work that we did.
Absolutely.
And I want to thank you both for coming along and spending time and taking time out your days, because quite clearly listening to you both, you are both really, really busy. So thank you for coming and recording the podcast.